It was a warm afternoon in a quiet neighborhood park. Children were lounging, running across the grass, and climbing the bright playground structures while parents sat on nearby benches enjoying the calm sunshine. Among the kids was a young girl named Emily. She had bright, curious eyes and long curly hair that bounced every time she ran. Emily was kind, brave, and full of life. Most people in the park didn't know who she was, and to her, that didn't matter at all. She just wanted to enjoy the day like any other child. What no one realized was that Emily was the daughter of a man known for strength, discipline, and justice, Chuck Norris. But Emily never used her father's name to get attention. Her father had taught her something far more important: respect, courage, and standing up for what is right. Emily was playing near the swings when a police officer suddenly walked into the park. His name was Officer Grant. His expression was harsh, and his voice was loud enough to turn heads. He looked around the playground with suspicion rather than care. When he noticed Emily sitting on the swing, he frowned. Something about her presence seemed to irritate him for no reason at all. Instead of calmly asking questions or greeting the families in the park, he marched straight toward the little girl. "Hey you," he barked sharply. Emily looked up, surprised by the aggressive tone. "Yes, sir," she replied politely. Officer Grant crossed his arms. "What are you doing here? Where are your parents? Kids like you shouldn't be wandering around alone." Several parents nearby glanced over, sensing something uncomfortable about the situation. Emily wasn't alone at all. Her father had just stepped away briefly to take a phone call near the park entrance. But before she could explain, the officer's attitude grew even more hostile. "You people always cause trouble," he muttered under his breath, loud enough for those nearby to hear. The playground slowly grew quieter. Parents exchanged uneasy looks. One mother stood up as if she wanted to intervene, but she hesitated. Emily felt her heart beating faster. She didn't fully understand why the officer seemed angry with her, but she remembered her father's words: "Stay calm. Respect everyone, even when they don't respect you." "My dad is right over there," Emily said gently, pointing toward the park entrance. Officer Grant scoffed. "Sure he is." Without warning, he grabbed the swing chains and pushed them roughly, forcing Emily to stumble as she stepped down. The sudden movement shocked everyone watching. A few children stopped playing entirely. At that exact moment, a tall figure slowly walked across the grass toward them. Chuck Norris had seen everything. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He simply walked forward with calm confidence. His presence alone seemed to shift the entire atmosphere of the park. Parents recognized him immediately, whispering to one another in disbelief. Officer Grant, however, hadn't noticed it yet. Next time, the officer snapped at Emily, "Make sure you don't cause problems around here." Then a deep, steady voice spoke behind him. "She didn't." Officer Grant turned around. Standing there was Chuck Norris himself, calm but focused. His expression wasn't angry, it was control. The kind of calm that made people realize they had made a very serious mistake. "Is there a problem here, officer?" Chuck asked. The officer looked slightly confused. "Who are you?" Emily ran toward her father and hugged him tightly. "That's my dad," she said quietly. Some people in the park began recording with their phones. The tension in the air thickened as Officer Grant slowly realized who he was dealing with. Chuck knelt beside his daughter. "Are you okay?" Emily nodded. "I'm okay, Dad." Chuck stood again, his calm gaze returning to the officer. "You pushed a child," Chuck said fiercely. "And you spoke to her with disrespect." Officer Grant tried to laugh it off. "Look, I'm just doing my job." Chuck's voice remained calm, but every word carried weight. "No," he said slowly. "Your job is to protect people." The entire park had fallen silent. And Officer Grant had no idea that the hardest lesson of his life was about to begin. Before the story continues, take a second to support the channel. If you enjoy powerful stories about justice, courage, and unforgettable moments like this one, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. Trust me, the next chapter will shock you even more. Because Officer Grant thought this was just another ordinary day. But he had just crossed the wrong family. And the lesson he was about to receive would change his life forever. The tension in the park felt almost electric. Parents had stopped chatting. Children had paused their games. Everyone's attention was fixed on the confrontation unfolding in the swings. Officer Grant stood stiffly in front of Chuck Norris, trying to maintain authority, but something about Chuck's calm confidence made the officer visibly uneasy. Chuck wasn't shouting, he wasn't threatening, in fact, he spoke with a quiet patience that made the situation even more powerful. "Officer," Chuck said calmly, "my daughter was doing nothing wrong." Officer Grant cleared his throat. "Look, I didn't know she was your kid." Chuck tilted his head slightly. "That shouldn't matter." Those words hit harder than any punch ever could. A few parents nodded in agreement. One man quietly said, "He's right." The officer shifted uncomfortably. "I was just making sure everything was under control." Chuck gestured gently toward the playground where dozens of children were now watching nervously. "Does this look like a dangerous situation to you?" Grant didn't answer. Chuck crouched down beside Emily again. "Sweetheart, can you wait on that bench for a moment?" Emily nodded and walked over to sit with a nearby family who smiled reassuringly at her. Now Chuck turned back to the officer. "I believe in respect," Chuck said. "I also believe people can learn from their mistakes." Grant crossed his arms defensively. "Are you threatening me?" Chuck shook his head slowly. "No." The officer smirked slightly, thinking he had regained control. But Chuck continued, "I'm offering you something better." The officer frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Chuck gestured toward the park. "A chance to do your job the right way." Before Grant could respond, 2 more police cars pulled up near the park entrance. Apparently several parents had already called the police department about the situation they witnessed. 2 senior officers stepped out. The moment they saw Chuck Norris standing there, their expressions changed instantly. "Mr. Norris," one of them said respectfully. Chuck nodded. "Good afternoon." The senior officer looked toward Grant. "What happened here?" Several parents immediately began speaking up. "He pushed that little girl. He was yelling at her. He was completely out of line." Grant's face turned pale as the reality of the situation began sinking in. The senior officer turned toward Chuck. "Sir, we're very sorry about this." Chuck remained calm. "I don't want an apology." The officer looked surprised. "You don't?" Chuck shook his head. "I want accountability." He pointed gently toward the playground. "That little girl over there is my daughter. But today she could have been anyone's daughter." The words carried a powerful truth that everyone in the park felt. Chuck continued, "Respect shouldn't depend on who someone's parents are." The senior officer nodded. Slowly, "You're absolutely right." Grant tried to speak. "Sir, but the senior officer raised his hand. "Officer Grant, we'll be discussing this back at the station." Grant looked defeated. The arrogance he had carried earlier was gone. Now he looked embarrassed and ashamed. Chuck stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. "You wear that badge to protect people. Remember that." Grant lowered his eyes. "Yes, sir." The crowd slowly relaxed as the tension disappeared. Children began playing again. Parents returned to their conversations. Emily ran back to her father and hugged him tightly. "Dad, are you mad?" she asked. Chuck smiled gently. "No, sweetheart," and knelt down beside her. "Sometimes people forget how to treat others," he said softly. "But when we stand up for what's right, we help remind them." Emily smiled. As Chuck and Emily walked out of the park together, many parents quietly thanked him. But Chuck simply nodded politely. Because for him, the most important victory that day wasn't about proving strength. It was about teaching respect. And sometimes, the strongest lesson is delivered not with anger, but with calm justice. If this story inspired you and you believe respect and courage still matter in this world, make sure you subscribe to the channel and like the video. Your support helps bring more powerful stories like this to life. And remember, the next story might be even more shocking.